Hello and welcome to The World This Week with Anthony Baxter. A look at some of the biggest global news stories for an international city, brought to you by the London Live News team. Tonight, scientists warn a volcanic eruption on La Palma could continue for months as a river of lava poses a list of dangers to those on the island. The White House comes under pressure after footage emerges of Border Force officials using horses to push back refugees from Haiti trying to enter America. And a growing food crisis in Afghanistan, how a month on from the Taliban takeover, soaring prices, job losses and a cash crunch are creating a new class of hungry. All of that to come before 7:30, but first tonight, this week saw world leaders gather in New York for the 76th United Nations General Assembly, with a focus on addressing COVID and the climate crisis. With just over a month to go before COP26 in Glasgow, the Prime Minister told the UN that the summit would be a turning point for humanity.
It's time for humanity to grow up. It's time for us to listen to the warnings of the scientists. And if you look at COVID, if you want to see an example of the gloomy scientists being proved right, it's time for us to grow up and understand who we are and what we are doing. The world, this precious blue sphere with its eggshell crust and wisp of an atmosphere, is not some indestructible toy, some bouncy plastic romper room against which we can hurl ourselves to our heart's content. Daily, weekly, we are doing such irreversible damage that long before a million years are up, we will have made this beautiful planet effectively uninhabitable, not just for us, but for many other species. And that is why the Glasgow COP26 summit is the turning point for humanity.
Well, while the overall tone of the speech was sombre, there came an unexpected twist, and perhaps only one that Mr. Johnson will be able to make.
And when Kermit the Frog sang, "It's not easy being green." You remember that one? I want you to know that he was wrong. He was wrong. It is easy. It's not only easy, it's lucrative, and it's right to be green. He was also unnecessarily rude to Miss Piggy, I thought, Kermit the Frog. But it is easy to be green. We have the technology, as we used to say when I was a kid. We can do it. We have, so in 40 days' time, we have the choice before us.
There we go. Well, the New York gathering was preceded by the PM's first White House meeting with Joe Biden, sitting side by side in the Oval Office. This meeting was focused on trade, but it left the UK party frustrated from a lack of commitment from the US president. Let's just take a look at that moment in more detail.
President Trump said that the UK was in front of the queue when it came to a trade deal. You seem to have a different approach. Is that because of your heritage, your concern about the Irish protocol? Is that what's holding it back when it comes to doing this deal with the UK?
There are two separate issues. On the deal with the UK, that's continued to be discussed. But on the protocols, I feel very strongly about those. We spent an enormous amount of time and effort in the United States. It was a major bipartisan effort made, and I would not at all like to see, nor I might add, would many of my Republican colleagues like to see a change in the Irish Accords, the end result having a closed border again.
That is absolutely right. On that point, Joe, you know, we are completely at one, and I think nobody wants to see anything that interrupts or unbalances the Belfast Good Friday Accords. That's the Belfast Good Friday Agreement.
A roundup of some of the political moments coming out of the States this week. Right, let's head to La Palma next, where a volcanic eruption is continuing to cause problems on the Spanish island. This is the wall of lava up to 12 metres high that has bore down on a village on the island since the start of the eruption almost a week ago. The molten rock has advanced at around 120 metres an hour down hillsides towards the Atlantic Ocean. Well, firefighters have tried to save as many houses as possible from being entombed by digging trenches to divert the flow. The last time the volcano erupted was 1971, and those who remember it say this time is far worse.
It is not comparable with this one. This one has done a lot of damage. The other one practically didn't destroy anything. Nothing. This one, a disaster. A disaster. If the lava is going down a slope, it doesn't fall left or right. It goes straighter. But once it hits a plateau like Tudhoke, where it is now, it tends to spread out.
Well, close to 7,000 people have now been moved out of their homes, and authorities say more dangers lie ahead for residents, including earthquakes, possible new lava flows and acid rain. There are also fears that when the lava reaches the ocean, it could trigger landslides and produce clouds of toxic gas. Scientists have warned that the eruption could continue for weeks, if not months. Also this week, America pledged to donate 500 million more doses of the Pfizer vaccine to developing nations from next year. The additional jabs will see the total US commitment on vaccine sharing exceed 1 billion doses. Experts reckon the total number needed to inoculate 70% of the world's population will be about 11 billion. The UK has promised to deliver its share of this over the next 12 months. The World Health Organization has warned that air pollution may be more dangerous than previously thought. The body has this week slashed the maximum safe levels for pollutants like nitrogen dioxide. It's estimated 7 million people around the world die prematurely each year from diseases that are linked to pollution. The WHO has put it on a par with smoking and unhealthy eating. And Germans will go to the polls tomorrow in a vote which will decide the country's new Chancellor. Angela Merkel will step down following the results, having been in office for 16 years. Opinion polls give the centre-left a lead over the outgoing Chancellor's Conservatives for the first time since 2006. Three parties currently believe they could secure enough seats through a coalition to win the election and choose the next Chancellor. Now, the White House is facing sharp condemnation for its handling of the influx of Haitian migrants after footage emerged of Border Patrol agents on horseback using aggressive tactics. It comes as the country's US Special Envoy resigned in protest over the deportation of Haitian migrants. Well, the viral videos of agents manoeuvring their horses to block and move migrants attempting to cross the border sparked resounding criticism from Democrats on Capitol Hill, who are calling on the Biden administration to end powers brought in during the pandemic to deport migrants without giving them an opportunity to seek asylum. The president is, at the same time, under attack from Republicans, who say he's failing to tackle what they've called a crisis at the border.
There are thousands of Haitian migrants in particular that have arrived at the U.S. southern border in a border town called Del Rio, Texas. There's a large encampment that the U.S. Border Patrol is now trying to break up, and there are agents there trying to keep these Haitians from entering the U.S. There's this large influx of Haitian migrants, partly because the situation in Haiti has been so difficult for the past few months. In addition to, an out of control COVID pandemic, they've experienced earthquakes and other extreme weather incidents that have caused a lot of Haitians to try to leave the country and try to enter the US. They're images that have not only shocked, I think, average Americans, but even Democrats on Capitol Hill are denouncing the images. And the White House press secretary said yesterday that those images are horrifying. She actually also said this morning that the president has seen them and he finds them horrifying as well.
Well, these were the scenes at Haiti's main airport on Tuesday after migrants arrived back having been deported from the US. Many tried to rush back towards the plane that they'd arrived on, whilst others threw shoes at the jet. Footage taken at the airport shows people scrambling for their personal belongings after the bags were dumped out of the plane.
We are not thieves. why they handcuffed us. The situation that is developing now is a Haitian group who have left Brazil, Chile, Mexico to go to the United States, which we know has opened its door for Haitian people to go. Haiti's Prime Minister said, "Bring all Haitian people back. We can take care of them."
Well, the Australian city of Melbourne was hit by an unusually powerful earthquake this week. Officials say the magnitude 5.9 tremor was the largest onshore quake in the state's history. Thankfully, it appeared to have only caused minor damage.
Well, this morning at 9:15, Victoria experienced its largest earthquake at 5.9, and that's been confirmed by Geoscience Australia. Fortunately, we've not seen any injuries as a result of the earthquake this morning, mainly due to where the epicentre occurred somewhere between Mansfield and Rawson in the northeast of the state.
The World This Week continues after the break. We'll be explaining why a perfect storm has created a gas crisis across the UK and Europe. Hello there, welcome back. You're watching The World This Week from London Live News, a review of the main international stories that have broken over the last 7 days. Still to come before 7:30. 2,000 days and counting, the family of Nazanin Zaharia Ratcliffe mark the milestone of her detention in Iran with a giant game of snakes and ladders, calling to an end to the political gameplay that they say she's caught up in. Before that, though, one of the biggest stories to hit the UK this week has been the soaring cost of gas and the wide implications it has. Aside from what it might cost us to heat our homes this winter, it also has a knock-on effect when it comes to food supplies, even keeping nuclear reactors safe in power plants. Well, let's just take a look at what's causing the problem. Well, to begin with, demand is a factor. As Europe heads into the winter, the need for gas rises, particularly from countries like the UK, which rely on the resource to heat homes and offices. But this has come at the same time as a list of other problems hits the sector. Supplies from Russia have dried up, whilst demand is also high in Asia, which has had pressure on international markets. At the same time, several platforms in the North Sea have closed so that maintenance work can take place. It was paused during the pandemic. The weather has also played a part. The final few weeks of summer saw high pressure over the UK, meaning calmer conditions, putting our wind farm resources out of action. Then to add to all of that, another stroke of bad luck. Cables that import electricity from France were damaged last week. So what does all of this mean when it comes to our bills? Well, prices were already set to rise in October for 15 million households that are on standard tariffs after it was agreed that the energy price cap could go up. It's a move which has led to criticism of the regulator Ofgem. It says the average price rise for customers this winter will be about £135. Well, here's what you've told us about the potential rise in energy bills.
I'm a freelance actor. So in terms of regular income, there is no regular income at this moment, really. So, I mean, there's definitely a concern about, not about the ability to pay, but sort of the long-term impact of this, you know. And, you know, there could be a sort of a short rise in the interim, short term, right? But then does that stay and does that become normal, you know, for us? So I think that's really sort of a concern in terms of just general rising prices and in general people's ability to be able to sustain any kind of lifestyle, I guess, in London or anywhere really.
I don't really understand the tariffs of all the gas and electricities, and I know it's going to go up, but by how much we don't know yet. So do I change my supplier or do I stick with my supplier is another question in hand. So it's all a bit sort of fuzzy.
I think we should be insulating our buildings to keep costs down, and the stance on this is it should be about building renovation and green technologies and that type of thing. So it's horrible to see companies potentially going under, but I'm not so sure I have enormous sympathy for all the fossil fuel companies, full stop.
Let's move to Canada next, and Justin Trudeau won a third term as the country's Prime Minister this week, but his early election gamble to win a majority of seats failed. The Liberals won the most seats of any party, taking hold of 157. That's the same number they had in 2019, but 13 short of what's needed to form a majority in the Canadian House of Commons. It means he'll need the support of other parties to pass legislation.
What we've seen tonight is that millions of Canadians have chosen a progressive plan. Some have talked about division, but that's not what I see. That's not what I've seen these past weeks across the country. I see Canadians standing together, together in your determination to end this pandemic, together for real climate action, for $10 a day childcare, for homes that are in reach for middle-class families.
Also this week, a court in Morocco found 11 men guilty of carrying out a brutal and sustained attack on a 17-year-old girl. Known as Khadija, the young woman went public with the scars, burns and tattoos she says her attackers inflicted on her. She was also seriously sexually assaulted by the gang in 2018. The case has caused national outrage. Lawyers for the victim say the sentences were not tough enough. Human rights campaigners say attacks against women are common in the country. Ukraine has warned of a strong response after an aide to the president survived an assassination attempt. 10 bullets struck a car carrying the aide, a close personal friend of the president, outside of Kiev on Wednesday. The driver of the Audi was badly injured. It's not yet known if the gunman remains at large. The EU says it's considering forcing all smartphone and tablet makers to use the same charging solutions. Under the new rule, all gadgets sold in the bloc will have to have the USB-C charger. The aim is to reduce waste and to encourage people to reuse existing chargers when they buy a new device. The tech giant Apple has said the move would harm innovation. The Duke and Duchess of Sussex have visited New York's World Trade Center, along with the city's mayor and state governor. Harry and Meghan are there for a global citizen event later on today, which will call on world leaders to take up a vaccine equity policy to help the pandemic. Meghan was heard to say that it was wonderful to be back in the city. Now, the World Food Programme warned on Wednesday that only about 5% of people in Afghanistan had enough to eat, as soaring prices, job losses and a cash crunch were creating a new class of hungry. An ongoing drought, the second in 3 years, is adding to the country's woes, which is also still reeling from the Taliban takeover. As a result of the political turmoil, the country's economy is in free fall, made worse by the rapid withdrawal of foreign aid.
Our surveys right now show that 9 out of 10 people don't have enough to eat. About 7 out of 10 are using extreme coping strategies like borrowing food, not eating enough, eating inferior quality products. And 50% of the population has experienced running out of food at least once in the last 2 weeks.
The World Food Programme says around $200 million is needed to prepare aid for the country in time for the winter. Without it, as many as 14 million people could be at risk of malnutrition. On the streets of Kabul, one shopkeeper was prepared to speak out about the situation.
I want economic stability from the new government, the Islamic Emirates of Afghanistan. Economic stability because people are concerned about the situation and they, the government, should do something to improve the economic situation to address people's concerns.
This week marked 2,000 days since the Hampstead charity worker Nazanin Zaharie-Ratcliffe was held in Iran on spy charges. The mother of one has remained in prison there despite ending her original sentence. The Foreign Secretary, Liz Truss, used the milestone to call on Iran to release her, and her husband has asked the government to designate her a hostage rather than a prisoner of a foreign state. He and the couple's 7-year-old daughter played a giant game of snakes and ladders outside Parliament this week to highlight what he says is the political gameplay over his wife's detention.
I mean, the thing I'd asked for the Foreign Secretary to do today was to call Nazanin hostage, to acknowledge that this is hostage-taking. We'll see in the statement, if there's one that comes out today, if that's made. I think there needs to be more honesty about what's going on. You know, we've been going for 2,000 days. That is symptomatic of it not working so far. We've spent a good year now, you know, quite close in the doorway, negotiations going on, and the government very reluctant to do anything too tough so as to disrupt those negotiations. And it's felt like Iran's been stringing them along, if I'm honest. So I think there needs to be a cost to inertia, but B, just challenging the practice, which means acknowledging this is hostage-taking and acknowledging that this is not acceptable. So that's why last week we did send in a file with 10 names saying these people, you know, merit Magnitsky sanctions, which are human rights sanctions on individuals. I think the government needs to be brave and to start doing things that will cause a rethink amongst, you know, those in charge of Iran's hostage-taking practices.
Richard Ratcliffe there speaking earlier this week. Just time to show you these pictures. Chester Zoo has this week introduced its Colombian spider monkey baby. Proud mum, Kiara, gave birth in late August, but the infant was kept well hidden until now. The destruction of their habitat, hunting and trafficking have left the species critically endangered, so this birth considered hugely important for the international breeding programme. Keepers unable to determine the sex of the newborn, as mum, who is 11, is incredibly protective. That is all from The World This Week with Anthony Baxter. Thanks for watching. We'll see you at 7 next Saturday as we round up the biggest international stories for a global city. And we'll leave you this evening with pictures from the 73rd Emmy Awards that took place in Los Angeles, America's biggest celebration of the TV industry.